this really great experience at this eco village last week, and I learned some really interesting things. So one of the things that I learned was, well, for one thing, how long it takes. It took them 20 years basically to restore the place and really have an established community. They have a restaurant and a guest house there, and that's how they bring in income in addition to their farming, which is doesn't really bring in money. They have olives, and they work in cooperation with some of the cooperatives in the local area. And the place is amazing. But one thing that I think is really missing, and they're starting to feel it right now, is having thought about future planning. So when they created the place, there were a bunch of young people. They got together, they looked for land. There's a few German couples and a few Italian couples, and they looked around Europe and they found this place and they got this castle really pretty much by luck. It's a 160 room castle. And some of the rooms are little and some of the rooms are big or whatever. But one of the things that's really hard about community is getting people to join community, especially if you've already got your values done. And at this point, they've been there 31 years. Their children are adults mostly. They have one or two families with younger kids, but mostly you've got these people who are in their 50s and 60s of their life. Their kids are off, their kids mostly left to go study somewhere and aren't planning on becoming farmers. And here are these guys, and it's really hard work. It somehow doesn't seem to get to be less work. And then, because you still, every morning they get up at 9 and whatever has to be done with the actual agriculture has to be done. They get up, I guess, earlier than 9, but they take the volunteers out around between 8 and 9 to the whatever it is needs to be done. I'm guessing in the summer that if they do it earlier in the morning. And then they have a guest house that needs cleaning and, preparing the food for the guests if people come. It's just not less work. And here they are thinking, wait a second, am I going to have to work this hard for the rest of my life? Because the young people aren't necessarily interested in taking this place over. And then they're not quite there yet. But for example, their parents are aging, and one of the guys has his father there. But you have to be in good shape to live there because there is no room that leads to another room without a step. And so this idea of thinking in advance, like at the stage that Emmanuel is, that's why I was so excited that you're here. Like, what would you do differently starting out your project knowing that you're going to get older? And right now you might have all the energy in the world, but 30 years from now, you're going to be thinking, when do I get to slow down? So yeah, that's the topic I kind of want to explore with us on the call today is, as you're creating a community or a sustainable community, how do you think about this issue of bringing people in and how it, how do you plan for that?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have an answer. My first go-to would be like try to analyze how they could systemize the input of new people, which is what they need. It's a population problem. So how do you get new members to come in as old members go out? Are they?
They're not going to go out, right? This is their home. They built it. It's more like they want to they want to retire one day, and they've put all their work into. And the idea of living in a community, right, is that the community takes care of you.
So we have to set up our economies so they integrate a labor force renewal, because that's basically what you're talking about. And when you have a population a laboring population that is getting older, how can you recruit new members to participate in the labor that you are doing, so that the people that are exiting the labor force can do so. This week I was working at a friend's house on the community project, and while he was cooking supper, I started to do a chart of all the flows that is come in coming into the economy we're trying to create, right? So the idea is not to do only food, right? It's to create a whole ecosystem that uh, enables everything or all the flow um, to flow in a new internal economy. So I would think it goes back to the idea you had when you asked me, well, if we're getting someone else into the community with a sufficiency currency, one of the questions is, can we support that person, right?
One of the things that you don't have on your chart, I guarantee you, is advice and mentorship and
Right,
caring for one another and making people feel welcome and teaching people communication skills.
right. So
Yeah.
for me, it's about creating enough flows that we can support everyone from the get-go, but not from only one activity, from a mattress, from an ecosystem.
I like that a lot, and I like what you said before about having education as part of that, right? Having the people who don't want to do
Mm.
as much physical labor, who can't do physical labor, doing that. And it's very funny because I completely unintentionally ended up in that role. I was helping cook in the kitchen one day, and one of the young, it was Saturday, and one of the young people, I guess he's about 16, goes, I think maybe tomorrow I'll make a cheesecake. And I said, ooh, well, I don't eat, I'm lactose intolerant, so I don't eat cheesecake. But maybe if you're making a cheesecake, there seem to be a lot of pears lying around. It's pear season. Maybe I'll make something with the pears and we could have a cook off. And he goes, oh, a cook off. And then one of the other young people, one of the volunteers who's about 19, heard, he's like, oh, there's going to be a cook off. And we had like all of Sunday afternoon, we had a bake off and everybody made things and these people don't eat dessert very often. And I was a very popular person because I kept their teenagers busy on a Sunday afternoon, and everybody had dessert, which they said, like, since Christmas, we haven't had this many desserts on one plate. So there is and it's joyful, right?
Uh,
That wasn't labor. Like, you keep using this word labor, and every time you say labor, I think, you know, it was,
right, right, right.
we had a good time. We had a cook off, you know. So there's something joyful about that, and in fact certainly there are places where, I mean, there's these every now and again you'll see some article about how they built a kindergarten next to an old folks home, and they have the old folks come over there, and then the health trajectory for the old folks is better as well.
Well, if the person is taking resources to eat, and his job is to facilitate whatever facilitation he
Yeah.
does for the community, well, that's the interrelation,
Yeah, but what if he's a bum and he doesn't do anything?
right?
Like, I mean, that's the thing, right? There's a lot of bums there's always a lot of bums. We call them children
Right.
that don't have any job in the community and take all the resources. What do you do with those bums? Right? Right. That's the thing, is that's why I say there's no interrelationship, because the sufficiency is about taking care of the people, and sometimes it'll be something like, wow, it's going to be a really hard year. If you're over 15, help us. Or it's going to be a really great year. If you're over 15, you better come out and get some pears, because otherwise we're not going to be able to pick all the pears. And so if
Right.
you're over, right, so, and that's a community decision. But then once the pear harvesting is finished, it's like, yeah, all the bums can go back to being bums again and go to school. But I think that there would be a cultural ritual that would say, this person really is a bum, and we don't appreciate his behavior, and we're not going to feed him anymore unless he steps up. In the same way there would be like, this person is the egotist, and the elders aren't going to share their knowledge with him. So I think that that's a community decision, looking at, okay, here's somebody who, they were out because of an illness, let's say. It's time for them to come back. What do we give them as they're rehabilitating themselves? Because they
Right.
can't go back to full work. And that would be a community decision, so that you don't let people bum around too long, but you do give them time to recover when they broke their leg. And I mean, it's the same like your family, that there's this kid and he's still living at home. At what point do you tell him you got to leave? I
Right.
think that those are community decisions about, well, we really, and then you have somebody who's like, look, I don't want to clean toilets, I'm going to invent the toilet cleaning automation machine.